this time on Hyder Road, and believe it or not, it's named after Charles B. Hyder. The home of Mr. and Mrs. Charles B. Hyder is the locale, and we thank you, Mrs. Hyder, for letting us come.
We're glad to have you.
It's kind of a gloomy day today, but still spring is showing around. I see a number of jonquils blooming.
Oh yeah, and the trees are budding, birds are out. I think spring's here to stay. At least I hope so.
You have a beautiful, nice, big lawn area here and a wonderful home. It's my first visit here. How long have you been around this place?
I've been around here 63 years.
Mm-hmm.
My 63rd birthday is next month, and I've lived here off and on all of my life.
I see. So, and you, before you were married, your name was?
Collie, Tom Collie's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And I was born about a half a mile from here, just up the road, that I moved here when I was 7 years old.
The Tom Collie, that's kind of a famous name around fair dealing, isn't it?
Yes, the Collies have been here a good while.
I remember I was doing some research on a church I'd never heard of. Miss Flora Hartley told me about it, Bethlehem. And I finally got from Mrs. Connie Norwood the original charter member list, and there was a W.T.G. Collie or some such name.
W.F.G. William Farrell Gruggs Collie. That's my grandfather.
That was your grandfather.
Uh-huh.
Well, I wondered
and
if it were not.
He helped establish the Fair Dealing Church of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of us have grown up there.
Who was your mother?
Rixony Crisp. She came from Callaway.
Mm-hmm. I remember going to Hardin High School with a boy named Crisp, J.B. Crisp, I believe it was. I think he may have lived right in the edge of Callaway County. Back then, we didn't pay too much attention to the county line.
No, I never knew him. Didn't know any of the Crisps except her immediate family. Mm-hmm. And Dwight Crisp was her brother. He was in the Boy Scouts for years, and even up in New Jersey for a long time. But he's dead now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I knew Dwight Crisp.
Did you know Dwight?
He came back here and retired at
Right.
Murray, didn't he?
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I knew him.
Well, that was my mother's brother, and she has one brother still living, Carl Crisp. He lives up near Almo.
Now, how many children were there in your family?
In my family, there were 9 of us. I was next to the youngest.
Yeah.
But
families generally were larger in earlier days.
Yeah, we're all still living except one brother. My oldest brother's dead, Edmund Collie. Mm-hmm. And
well, where would you have gone to grade school in this neighborhood?
I went to Cleveland. We called it Shoe Fly, but actually back before my time, there was an old Shoe Fly, back a mile or so from where Cleveland was. Cleveland was located on the Birmingham Road. About a mile, we walked 1.25 miles a day each way.
There was a one-room grade school within 2 or 3 miles of anybody, I guess.
Right, I guess
days.
it was. I know that one was there, and then we were only about 1.5 miles from Maple Spring grade school. Mm-hmm. But we went to Cleveland.
Now, my dad went to a place called Johnson. I don't remember ever seeing it.
I know where Johnson was. In fact, wasn't that where Hazel taught?
Mm.
Hazel Inman, a friend of mine, taught there. Right. Mm-hmm. The last school I guess there was there. It was over on the about where Cedar Knob is now.
Mm-hmm.
Just foot of the hill.
Yeah. Now, I remember Unity School, and I remember on the road toward Hardin a place called Joppa.
I've heard of it, but I don't know. There was a Collie school down in the bottom past Maple Spring Church.
Mm-hmm.
And those little schools, of course, were scattered all over the county.
Mm-hmm. Would you happen to recall any of your teachers?
Oh, most all of them. Miss Ray Collie.
Was related to you?
Yes, she's a cousin of some sort.
Were you the teacher's pet?
I don't think so. Although I liked her.
Yeah.
And then Lorena Collie.
Mm-hmm.
who was married to Solon Colley, is a cousin of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Robert Goheen was my 7th and 8th grade teacher
Oh, now I know
at
Robert
Cleveland.
Goheen.
Thought you would.
He's still living.
Uh-huh. Well, Miss Ray is, too. She's at
Yeah.
Fern Terrace in Murray. And then I went to Birmingham to high school. And the teachers there was, Wyman Jones was principal my freshman year. But after that, Lester Goheen was
I
principal.
remember Lester. Now, he taught ag at Lone Oak, as I recall, and his wife, Zytel, wasn't
Zytel taught English and home ec at Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my main 2 teachers down there. Part of the time, Hubert Jaco. And
I remember Hubert Jaco also.
Terry, McCoy Terry was there part of the time. We only had 4 teachers at Birmingham High.
Now, recently, they had an honors program for the 1932 Birmingham boys and the 32 Gilbertsville girls, who both went to the state tournament that year from
Yes,
Marshall County.
uh-huh.
So McCoy was on that famous team.
He was on that team. I wasn't going to high school then.
Uh-huh.
I-
Yeah.
But I went to, in fact, I graduated from Birmingham the next to the last class that was there.
Before they closed
Before
it
the-
with dam
Uh-huh.
construction.
And then I taught school there in primary grades. The last year there was elementary school was there.
I think they closed it about 38, 30, was that the last year they
No,
went? 38?
42, I think it was.
Oh.
That the last year of the high school.
Now, the high school, I remember Joe Fulks, and I graduated the same year, 1940. And he went to Birmingham through 39 and then transferred to Catawba in 1940.
Right, uh-huh.
But now they kept the elementary going longer, I guess.
The high school, he transferred before they quit having high school at Birmingham.
Oh, he did?
Yes, because I graduated in 41, I think is right.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had elementary, no, they had high school one more year, and then elementary another year or 2.
You
And-
know, I've always thought that the reason he left Birmingham was that the school closed. But
No, they moved. I imagine TVA bought his family out, and they
Bought the
moved,
property.
and he
Yes.
moved.
Mhm.
That's the reason.
so a lot of people were moving there
Right.
because they were losing their property.
That's right. Uh-huh. And we rode the school bus. I finished 8th grade at Cleveland the year of the flood in 37.
Mhm.
And Mr. Robert Goheen was teacher, and he couldn't get back to give us the 8th grade test. January is when school was out.
Mhm.
And so we was out of school for the last week or 2, and he came back in the spring. Then there were 2 of us that took the test. And then the next year, Cleveland was consolidated with Birmingham. And Mr. Holland, I can't remember his name. We called him Bishop, though. Drove a bus. He owned the bus. He's just like a big box with a
Mhm.
plank down each side and a double seat down the middle. But anyway, the county hired him to haul the elementary students, but we high school students had to pay 10 cents a day to ride the bus.
Yeah.
And then the elementary school was only 7 months, and high school went 9 months. So the last 2 months, I had to board in Birmingham. But one year, there were peddlers going between here and Birmingham every day. So Hazel Inman, my girlfriend here close, and I would ride in the mornings with the peddlers to school, and her dad worked at Agnes Ferry Bridge as toll collector, and he had to go to Birmingham to the bank every afternoon to take the money, so we rode home with him.
Mhm.
But there was enough peddlers that we could ride. Occasionally, though, there was one that wouldn't come, or for some reason, we walked from here to Birmingham, which is 5 miles.
Oh,
And
now,
we walked home several times, but
that's a good walk. Yeah.
but we made it. I remember one morning.
Even your husband's agreeing that that's true.
He agreed that time.
Yeah.
We walked one morning. I don't remember. For some reason, the peddler didn't go. But we made up our minds we were going anyway, so we took off. We were late getting there.
Mhm.
And I had a speech to give in English class that morning. And it was something about being punctual, being sure it's on time. I went ahead and made that speech, and Zytel really complimented me on that. But we got there, and I made my speech.
Yeah.
Was that Zytel Lockhart?
Yeah.
She told it our
Uh-huh.
You were a little worried lest you not be there and it be
Right.
an incongruous situation. Well, those things are always funny and come back to mind. So you were graduated then from Birmingham in the class of 41.
41.
Okay.
And there was one more class graduated from there,
Mhm.
42.
They went up through 1942.
Uh-huh.
Well, that clears up a mystery in my mind, at least, of a misunderstanding, at least. All right, now, what do you remember about grade school days that you liked, like games that were played?
Oh, I liked everything about grade school. I have fond memories of shoe fly.
Hmm.
And,
I'd never heard of shoe fly. And tell you the truth, I'd never heard of Cleveland.
well, there was, actually we called it shoe fly, but it wasn't. The old school was shoe fly.
Hmm.
But we played ball. We called it town ball.
Mhm.
Of course, we just got a board and for a bat and used any kind of a ball someone brought.
It was a little like baseball, but if I remember town ball, couldn't you cross a person out by throwing the ball in front of them? Or?
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Best I remember. And we played hopscotch, and we played pop the whip. One time I remember a dirigible came over, and the teacher took us out so we could look at it.
Quite an
And,
experience.
that was really an experience, seeing that dirigible. But that is stuck in my mind.
Hmm. Now, what happened after you finished high school? This was 1941.
41.
The war was about to begin. Did you go off and work in the defense plant? Or?
I went to school in 42, but in the spring of 43, I decided I wanted to go to work. So I went to Michigan and worked in a defense plant.
Hmm.
And then I came home in 45 and we got married.
Did you go to Murray State?
Oh yes, I went to Murray State. And then, but after we were married and had our family well started, I went back and graduated from Murray State.
Mhm.
And Charles has followed construction a lot of the time, well up until 70.
Yeah.
But when our oldest child started to school, I came home. I said, I'm going home, put them in school. I'm not going to drag them all over the country for school. So we have 4 children. They all finished elementary and high school in Marshall County and got their BS degrees from Murray State.
Well, you and I were in college at the same time. I just realized that. Or at least, but I didn't remember it until now. I'll have to get out my yearbook. And
Yeah, I was,
look it
well,
up.
actually, I didn't. I only went that one semester before I went to work in the defense plant.
Now, you mentioned your husband a moment ago, and he's sitting right here. We want to get him in the conversation before it's over. Where did he come from? How'd you meet him?
Well, that is a good one. We met him in a strawberry patch up near Aurora.
Uh-huh.
And he threw a big mushy rotten strawberry and hit me with it, and that's when we met.
That got your attention.
That got my attention. And it went from there.
I've always noticed that boys would pull girls' pigtails in class. You know, they're
Yeah,
they're
well.
wanting to get acquainted with them.
This was a strawberry.
Yeah.
So after that, we picked.
So he grew up in this part of the world then?
He grew up near Aurora, Union Ridge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he came from Tennessee when he was small, and his dad followed construction, so he had been about before. But they pretty well settled down after that. But I didn't meet him until I must have been 16, I guess. And
Well, let's get you in. Oh, you lean over here a little bit, and we'll ask you. Your father was from where?
My father was from Tennessee, born and raised around Clarksville.
Uh-huh.
And my grandfather and great-grandfather were from Guthrie, Kentucky. and owned a big plantation there before the Civil War, which we go back now to the cemeteries. And
Say, Guthrie, Kentucky is in the news this week. The new poet laureate of the United States was born in Guthrie, Kentucky, Robert Penn Warren, and he's the first one we've ever had, and he's just been appointed and given a salary of $36,000. So Guthrie is flying high right
In the
now.
news.
we were, as my wife said, we were all over the country. She didn't finish about the children a minute ago. When she brought them home, we was in Iowa, and that was the 33rd state they had been in. And Tom was 5 years old.
You just went wherever the job was.
I was like, they used to call me the brother of the wild goose.
Yeah.
I'd stay north in the summer, south, and it just happened to work that way.
Uh-huh.
You name a dam, I've been there, I've been on it.
Uh-huh.
And a heavy equipment operator, and then later went to the Portland Oregon College and finished 4 years training there, which I had already had training in the Army. I was sergeant in the Army.
You were in World War II.
Oh, yes, sir, for all of it. And
Now,
before.
Where did you train?
I went to Fort Knox in the 7th Cavalry Brigade,
Mm-hmm.
which we were about a year and a half later. We become the 1st Armored Division. We formed the 1st Armored, and then we formed the 2nd Armored, Patton's outfit. We was under Patton at the time we formed the 1st. Then we went from there, some maneuvers and some messing around, and then we went to Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And from Ireland...
Waited for the invasion of Europe?
No,
Oh.
sir, we were in the invasion of
North Africa.
Yes, sir,
In
we flew North Africa, got wiped out in Africa. 2 weeks later, we hit them and wiped them out.
Mhm.
And we had better equipment. We had very poor equipment when we went in, nothing to match the Germans. And then we went into Sicily and Italy and on up
Of
to-
General Mark Clark's group.
We
up
was
through
in
there.
Clark's Fifth Army
Uh-huh.
all the way up. And we made a mighty Anzio, and we stayed at Anzio, and we was the one to come off of Anzio.
That was a tough spot, wasn't it?
You don't never hear it mentioned.
No, you don't read too much about it. But
In
as I
good-
remember, the news in those days, it was really a real hard place.
We were there 90 days and lost 100,000 men, Americans.
Mhm.
And the Germans lost 147,000. I have that in print here.
Mm-hmm.
And I take military history all the time, and it's mentioned at one time.
Mm-hmm.
You never hear Anzio mentioned too much. That was the one time I believe we said one time we read where it was classed as one of the hardest battles fought on it, and the heaviest casualties in the length of time.
I've often wondered if it wasn't just a little bit embarrassing, certainly to Winston Churchill, because if
That
you
was-
remember, he was always talking about the soft underbelly of Europe. And of course, he wanted to make the main invasion there instead of right across the channel. Of course, Eisenhower finally overruled him. And I suppose it was good to kind of keep them off balance and not let them know exactly where you were going. It was hard enough when they didn't know.
That's true.
But
I have a book, History of Our Division, which we can only account for, 22 men now that we can account for, and 2 of them was in my platoon.
I was going to ask you, do you have reunions?
We have reunions, but most of them it was replacements, and we can account for our 91st Field.
Were you already married then?
No, sir, I was very single.
Yeah.
I say I've always sort of been the brother of the wild goose.
Yeah.
And Daddy was a contractor, and that put us all over the United States, and he went broke in the Depression on the Saluda Dam in South Carolina. He
Mhm.
was subcontracting that dam.
Mhm.
And I remember the prime contractor was a Rundle company. And I went to as high as 4 and 5 schools a year.
Yeah.
And but I did go to Aurora, and I started
And
school.
through the strawberry.
Oh, I threw the strawberry, no question, but it wasn't at her. It missed what I threw at it was her sister.
That was before he went in the Army.
Yeah.
But
that
we
was-
married
that was
after he
far-
came out.
Uh-huh.
That was far
Yeah.
before.
So you came back from the war when about 45 or 6?
I came back in 45. I'd
And-
been in a hospital a while, and I came back and then called her, and I was told this. It might not be right, but I was told she got excited when she heard from me and told her boss, my husband just got home, I'm leaving. We wasn't married. She was here immediately, though.
Yeah.
And my brother run out and grabbed his dog, my dog up that he had killed for him, and said, come on, Queen, we're going home. We've got a boy at home. He was at Nashville,
Yeah.
and he was home in about 3 hours. And then my brother in Columbus, Georgia, he was in his work clothes and come home. Him and his wife come home that way.
Mhm.
See, I was reported killed in action. And 90 days later, I showed up.
Yeah.
Very much showed up.
Well, I'm glad you did.
And I was wounded a time too, and my son, which I'm awful proud of, both of them, all of them, my children, all 4 of them, but my son is major in the Army,
Mhm.
and he's been wounded twice. And we've got a long history of military, but it goes all the way back. Our people are originally Virginians, come in and settled Woodford County.
Well, you owned Kentucky then for a long time.
Well, we've been Kentuckians a long time.
Yeah.
My
Virginia,
uncle-
let me get back to your wife for a minute. Now, you tell us about, I just heard him say you had 4 children. I imagine you can name them.
Yes, we have 4. Tom is the oldest. He's a major in the Army, plans to retire in 2 years. And he has started building his house. You might have heard it on Sam Burgess' People Beat about the storm. The earthquake-resistant foundation has been
Yeah.
built. It's right here back of us. And he plans to finish his house, the whole house, earthquake-resistant. And but he got his B.S. from Murray. He got his master's degree from University of Georgia.
Mhm.
And our next one is a daughter. She got her B.S. degree from Murray, and also her medical technology license.
Mhm.
But then she went on to New Orleans, Louisiana, and got her pharmacy license. And the third one was a girl, Elizabeth. She had her B.S. from Murray. She got her master's from Western State in special ed. Her husband's in the Army, and they're in Germany now, and she is teaching over there. And our youngest, we call Chuck, is Charles, and he's teaching school, industrial arts in Danville, Virginia. And we have 6 grandchildren.
I was going to ask you if you had any grandchildren. Now,
Right.
Are any of them close enough you get to see them? much?
Not often. Our closest are in Louisville, and there's 2 of them. They're 12 and 14. And Tom has 3. He has a boy 14 who they plans to spend his last 2 years high school at Marshall County High after Tom retires from the Army and they move here. Then he has a boy 12 and a girl 5.
All right, now let me get back to your husband for a second. You were telling me that the great tornado of March 4th, 1964 did some damage in this area. Just what did it do?
He cleaned it.
Our house.
Our house was nothing.
Destroyed the
It blew
house?
the foundation out of the ground.
Mhm.
We were sitting right in the middle of it, you see. It blew all the blocks down and actually part of the footer.
So this is a new house.
Oh, yes, sir. We built this
Obviously,
house.
the brick and so on, you can tell it's not very old.
Yes, sir.
That house was out on 68, just near Fair Dealings, the old Fair Dealings School.
Mhm.
And this was my dad's house, and it was an old log house. And he said he couldn't rebuild it. He wasn't able to build a new house. So he sold us the farm, which we had been trying to buy from him anyway.
Yeah.
So we bought it and moved here and built our house.
This finally convinced him that his
That
farm
convinced him.
career was over.
Right.
And so that's the reason you're just almost right on the spot of the old family home.
That's right. We liked the spot for a house, so we sawed the old log house in 2 and lived in one room of it while we built this one.
Actually, part of this house is setting in the old house place,
Mhm.
the north end of it.
Now,
here.
you were not actually here at the minute the house blew away.
No,
Where
sir.
were you?
I was at McOliver's Boulevard in Washington, D.C. I was piling foreman for Roy Ryan.
Well, how'd you get home?
Well, I come to the office that evening to check in, and they met me in the yard and handed me a note. The note says, Charles, don't call home, there's none. I didn't dawn on me right quick, and I walked in the door. They said, the planes were warmed up and waiting for you over at the airport, and said the policeman's going to carry you. That's the wildest ride I ever took.
Mm-hmm.
We left there, and we was in northwest Washington, right where the Kennedy building stands now.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to the National Airport, the Washington Airport, across 14th Street Bridge, and got on the plane, and we had to get off at Louisville. That's as far as they'd let us come. And then I had flew through Louisville so many times, everybody knew me. And the boy looked up and said, Charles, have you heard about the tornado? I said, yeah, that's what I'm doing here. He said, just hold everything, nothing going to Louisville, or to Paducah. And he made a phone call for a boy to come take his place, and he brought me home. Mm-hmm. I've never took much of a wilder ride than that. We left Louisville, and 4 hours and some minutes later, I was talking to her at Ishmael Reed's house, which is her brother-in-law.
Well, where did you get the land? At Paducah?
No, we landed. You mean coming here?
Yeah, here.
He drove a car from Louisville to her. I have never, as I told you, he didn't respect nothing but the road.
And you didn't know where to find us when you
And
got
we
here.
didn't know where to find anyone.
Because
And
you didn't know where they'd
well, there
gone.
was a law officer sitting out there at the house, and it's just a pile of junk all over the road and everywhere. And he said, who are you? I said, I'm the man who owns this pile of junk. He said, your wife is somewhere, I think, at her brother-in-law's. And I said, okay, so we come here.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a wreck, too. Everything blew down around here. And we went back to Ishmael's, and Mary was there, which lived on the Ishmael Reed
You went to
Road.
John's first.
Mm-hmm.
I went to John, my brother-in-law, right here first. See, it never touched a thing there. And my daughter, the oldest daughter, said, Mama is at Uncle Ishmael's. So we went over there. And during all this stopping now, we were still talking to her in 4 hours and some few minutes, 4 or 5 minutes.
We
And
didn't
that's
have
moving.
wasn't even 55-mile speed limit then.
No,
Well,
it wouldn't have mattered anyway. That boy, he was from Dexter, and he was scared to death too because the storm was up there too. You see.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, "I got a mother and daddy there, and this is the best excuse I know of to get there."
Mhm.
And he brought us, man. Oh man, he brought us.
Well, you know, we're down to 2 minutes left. Now, do you have life's embarrassing moments or something funny that you could tell? Now, you've just told us a real dramatic story there about you came home, and of course you'd lost a lot, but your wife was alive, and
Everything was alive. That was the great part.
that was the good part.
We lost nothing.
Uh-huh.
We just lost a lot of material.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were just happy no one was hurt in that storm.
Yeah.
I remember one time when I was little, we walked from here to Fair Dealing Church, and my brothers and sisters and I were walking, and down here by Mr. Norman Price's, there was a gully across the road. We had to walk across, and the water was too high, too wide there, so we walked up in the woods a little ways and was going to jump across the stream. Well, I was the smallest one, and I couldn't make it, so my brother says, all right, I'll pitch you across. He pitched me, but I fell backwards in that water. So my sister took me up to Mr. Norman's, and we stayed there and dried me out instead of going to church. It was one cold, wintry day. And I've always thought,
I've never heard any story exactly like that
I
one.
get a kick out of that every time we pass there. I say, there's the creek.
Yeah.
yeah, the rest of them could jump it, but I couldn't make it. And so my brother was going to just kind of pick me up and pitch me across, but I didn't land on my feet.
We've
So-
had a wonderful marriage life. We both will agree, and the families have done good. They're all well educated, and all have good jobs.
Yeah, 4 college graduates. That's pretty
Five. I've graduated them all.
good. Yeah.
You see why I've toured the country pretty close.
Yeah. You had to keep working.
I had to keep it coming. But I'll give her credit. We had cattle at the time, and she fed in snow, and she had a skunk that followed her back and forth of a morning before daylight. Now that's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
That little skunk would go to feed with her and back. I was in Oklahoma at the time, And that little skunk would go back and forth. She told me about it.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for letting me come.
Oh, we've enjoyed it, but the time sure has flown.
It does go in a hurry. And this has been our oral history broadcast. I'm Ray Mofield, and we've been visiting in the home of Mr. and Mrs. Charles B. Hyder on Hyder Road right here in Marshall County. It's not too far from fair dealing. I guess we'd call
It is considered.
It is considered fair dealing.
considered to be the fair dealing neighborhood. We return you now to our studio.